provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines on First at 9, weather wreaks havoc. As the Arabian Sea depression intensifies into cyclone, new developments in Bay of Bengal to create chaotic weather patterns in Sri Lanka.
Due to effect of the low pressure system in the Bay of Bengal region, prevailing weather condition is expected to enhance over the country.
Economic reforms on track. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe pledges internationalizing of Sri Lankan economy ongoing.
The global financial system should be used for benefit to stabilize ourselves and to strengthen ourselves.
Calling for LTTE revival. Former State Minister Vijayakala Maheshwaran arrested and released almost after an hour. Counter-attacking the critics. Former and present central bank governors have contradicting views on Sri Lanka's reserves position.
The previous government was able to build up reserves by nearly $5 billion, whereas this government has so far dropped the reserve by more than $1 billion.
Reserves are currently about 7.1 billion. I really want to know, where is this collapse?
Asian Para Games 2018. Sri Lanka clinches 5 medals on the opening day of track and field competitions in Jakarta.
Let's nurture fresh colors seen by little eyes, guided by the light of our love. This space is for your little one. Adding flavor to World Children's Day. Tiara.
A very good evening to all our viewers, and you're watching First at 9 on other Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now on to your top story tonight. The depression in the Arabian Sea, which brought weather disturbances to Sri Lanka, has now intensified into a cyclonic storm named Luban, 2,000 kilometers away from Colombo. However, the Meteorology Department says Cyclone Luban will not have any further impact on the island. All the new development in the Bay of Bengal area will create a chaotic weather situation. Now, meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre says the prevailing inclement weather situation in the country has claimed 9 lives so far, while leaving 48,980 people affected.
Sri Lanka faced severe weather conditions over the past week owing to weather disturbances brought by the formation of a depression in the Arabian Sea that was predicted to turn into a tropical cyclone which was expected to make landfall later this week. The depression has now intensified into a cyclonic storm named Luban as expected and has moved 2,000 kilometers away from Sri Lanka towards Oman and Yemen. However, its impact on Sri Lanka is minimal. Meanwhile, heavy rains continue to wreak havoc across 8 provinces in Sri Lanka, affecting nearly 49,000 people. Owing to the heavy rain, water levels of River Kalani, Kalu, Ging and Attanagaluoya have increased, submerging a number of low-lying areas. The areas of Millakanda and Baddegama were seen inundated due to River Kalu and River Ging overflowing. The Department of Meteorology meanwhile cautioned of fresh weather threats to Sri Lanka with a likely enhancement of current weather patterns owing to effect of a low-pressure zone over the central and adjoining southeast Bay of Bengal. Accordingly, heavy falls of about 150 millimeters can be expected in several areas of the western, northwestern, central, southern and Sabaragamuwa provinces and in Galle and Matara districts with gusty winds up to 70 to 80 kilometers per hour expected during thunder showers.
2 weather systems developed in the North Indian Ocean region. One is Cyclone Luba in the Arabian Sea. Another one is the low pressure area which is developed in the central Bay of Bengal region. Cyclone Luba is now moving away from the country. It is not affecting the weather in Sri Lanka, but low pressure system in the Bay of Bengal region is likely to intensify further next few hours. Due to effect of this system, prevailing weather condition is expected to enhance over the country, particularly in the southwestern part of the country. Due to effect of this system, heavy falls in about 150 millimeter can be expected at some places in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central and southern provinces.
Two houses in the area of Mapalagama in Galle were severely damaged after a mound of earth collapsed owing to heavy rains. According to our correspondent, fishermen in Galle have refrained from sailing to sea due to the inclement weather condition. Meanwhile, vehicular movement was interrupted due to heavy fog in Nochiagama in Anuradhapura this morning. A number of low-lying areas in Malegoda, Payagala continues to be inundated due to the heavy showers throughout the past few days. Water levels of the low-lying areas in Valipanna were meanwhile seen gradually reducing. Accordingly, the southern expressway that was closed due to the Mathugama-Alutgama route being submerged was reopened this morning. A landslip in Nahinna in Kalutara caused damages to a poultry farm. Onion farmers in Sigiriya, Habarana, Naula, Galevila and Dambulla are also left helpless as their cultivation was destroyed owing to the heavy rainfall. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre extends landslide warnings to Kalutara, Badulla, Galle and Galle.
People need to pay a lot of attention over the signs of the landslides. Any signs of the landslides being observed, they need to move from that particular locations. All the communication is to be connected with 117 call center number and the district disaster management units. 48,918 people been affected over the country in several districts. 9 deaths reported since the 1st of October up to now. More than 5,800 people been temporarily accommodated in safe evacuation centers. They are all being supplied with the relief and the dry rations and the cooked meals. Houses damaged been assessed by the district officials and the ground level officials.
Army personnel meanwhile helped to remove garbage from River Ging as waste had washed along with mud. The Minister of Irrigation and Water Resources Management, Duminda Disanayaka, said the Ministry of Disaster Management is prepared to face any outcome of the current adverse weather.
President Maithripala Sirisena arrived at the Seychelles International Airport this morning at the invitation of President of Seychelles, Danny Faure. President Sirisena will engage in a 2-day official visit to the archipelago. He was welcomed by Senior Minister Maksouzi Mondon, State Secretary for Cabinet and Public Services Mohammad Afi, as well as senior officials. The aim of the President's visit is to increase close cooperation between the two countries in sectors such as tourism, fisheries, health, education and ocean affairs. President Sirisena later met with the Seychelles President Danny Faure this afternoon for bilateral discussions, and the two countries signed memorandum of understandings for further expansion of bilateral cooperation. Now, the President is also scheduled to meet the Sri Lankan living in the country. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the government is committed to carry on with reforms in internationalising the economy. He expressed his views at the market open ceremonies at the London Stock Exchange headquarters today. The market open ceremony of the London Stock Exchange, which takes place at 8 AM every weekday at the LSE headquarters in Paternoster Square, was carried out under the auspices of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today. The Prime Minister was welcomed by the Chief Executive of London Stock Exchange Group, David Schwimmer, and was later given a tour of the operations at the LSE.
We are living in transformative times. So Sri Lanka has decided that we will face this not by taking a step back, but by going forward with our reforms and internationalizing the economy. You all are faced even with bigger challenges, and both of us are faced with uncertainties as to what will happen tomorrow, but it doesn't mean that we have to move away. The global financial system should be used for our benefit to stabilize ourselves and to strengthen ourselves. Therefore, we are going ahead with our reform. We are drafting the law for the offshore financial center. We are going ahead, much needed reforms, and finally, Sri Lankan Stock Exchange, I think, will have smiles on their face in a short period of time as they see newer entrants into the stock exchange. So these are some of the short-term measures we are taking. We have achieved impressive economic results in the last few years. We have to maintain it and build on it, that we can also at the same time afford to give some form of relief to our people.
Former State Minister Vijayakala Maheshwaran was arrested by the Organised Crimes Prevention Division earlier today when she appeared to record a statement on her controversial views regarding the LTTE organization's revival. However, she was later released on bail by the Colombo Chief Magistrate. On the 2nd of July, former State Minister Vijaya Kala Maheshwaran made a controversial statement in Jaffna in the presence of several ministers supporting the revival of the LTTE organization. Her statement was seen as a violation of the constitution and drew widespread criticism from many parties. Maheshwaran later had to step down from her position as the State Minister of Child Affairs. However, the Organised Crime Preventive Division launched an investigation into the incident, following which the former State Minister recorded a statement with the OCPD on the 24th of July. She was summoned by the Organised Crimes Preventive Division to obtain another statement today, during which Maheshwaran was arrested. She was later produced before the Colombo Chief Magistrate's Court. Police had filed a case under the 120th clause of the Penal Code, while Crimes DIG Kamal Silva requested the suspect be remanded. However, when Magistrate questioned reasons behind the request, the DIG emphasized that he does not have anything specific. DIG Silva, however, emphasized on his assumption that the former State Minister will not ignore summons or legal proceedings as she is a public servant. Due to an insufficient basis for imprisonment of the former State Minister, Colombo Chief Magistrate Rangadisa Nayaka released Maheshwaran on a surety bail of 500,000 rupees. The case was postponed until the 7th of December, and the Chief Magistrate instructed police to inform court on legal actions that will be initiated against the former State Minister on the day. The 4th Magistrate Court today issued overseas travel bans on both former Director of Terrorism Investigation Division, DIG Nalaka De Silva, and Director of Operations of the Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara. The ruling was announced when the duo appeared before court today.
Director of Operations of the Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara, recently revealed an alleged plot to assassinate President Maithripala Sirisena and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Namal Kumara also revealed voice recordings claimed to be between himself and former Director of Terrorism Investigation Division, DIG Nalaka De Silva, related to planning of the plot. The Criminal Investigation Department then launched an investigation into the allegation. The CID later presented their findings to court. It was in this backdrop that the 4th Magistrates Court issued summons to both DIG Nalaka De Silva and Director of Operations of the Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara, to appear before court today. Highlighting the importance of their presence in the country for the ongoing CID investigation, Magistrate Lanka Jayaratna today ordered overseas travel bans on both DIG Nalaka De Silva and Namal Kumara. Meanwhile, Government Analysts Department informed court to send an authorized CID official to collect the final report on the alleged voice recordings. The Magistrate Court then vested power on a CID official for the task and postponed the case until the 23rd of October. Court informed that suspects related to the case will be named once the CID receives the Government Analyst's report. After his appearance at the 4th Magistrate Court earlier in the day, Operations Director of Anti-Corruption Force Namal Kumara recorded a statement with the CID.
The joint opposition spoke on the current political climate of the country at a meeting with a group of Sri Lankan expatriates in United Kingdom yesterday.
The Prime Minister handed over the contract to assassinate the President via the IGP. However, no measures have been taken to arrest those whose voices were heard in the recordings. The 4th Magistrate then issues an order to ban overseas travel because it will hinder investigations. On the other hand, the Prime Minister is pressuring those from the Attorney General's office who are preparing evidence on this matter. I will write to President Maithripala Sirisena personally and request him to find the $1,000 billion account of mine in Dubai. Rajitha said he saw this account. If funds from this account is transferred to Sri Lanka, the rupee will be strengthened to 100 rupees against the US dollar. The JVP, the obedient disciple of the UNP, introduces the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. The real purpose behind this amendment is to bring a federal constitution. The government knows that the public who love this country will reject it once it undergoes a public referendum. Therefore, the government is trying its best to bypass it by a parliamentary vote. There is this competition in depreciation, and that is between the President, the Prime Minister, the IGP and the rupee of this country. The entire government is facing enormous challenges as a result.
United National Party alleges that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is directly responsible for the delay in holding provincial council elections. UNP parliamentarian Tushar Indunil made this remark at a media briefing held at Sirikota today. Now, he also spoke about the alleged plot to assassinate the president.
That telephone recording was between a loiterer, a traitor and a police officer. The police officer is not fit for his post if he engages in telephone conversations with such persons to topple governments or to assassinate the president. How can he conspire like that? We have to say very responsibly that we have no connection with it whatsoever. The general public will no longer be burdened. We are suffering enough due to large sums of loans obtained during the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime. Therefore, we will only extend concessions to people. We call for elections to be held under any system, but soon. However, the SLFP does not like to hold elections under the previous system.
Chairman of the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna, Professor G.L. Piris, holds the Tamil National Alliance responsible for snatching the basic rights of the Tamil and Muslim communities as they provide the two-third majority to enact legislation brought by the government to deprive the people of their franchise at provincial council level. He made these remarks at a media briefing held in Colombo today.
Today, the Provincial Council of the Central Province goes out of existence. On the 10th of October, the Provincial Council of the Wambe Province flickers out. Then on the 23rd of October, the Provincial Council of the Northern Province ceases to exist. The Tamil community, the Muslim community, they are all convinced that they have been taken for a ride. They have been deceived and their basic rights have been taken away. The Tamil National Alliance campaigned at the parliamentary elections that were held in August 2015 on the basis of greater powers being devolved to the Provincial Council of the Northern Province. But what has happened today? Not greater power or lesser power, zero powers. Because the vehicle of devolution that is established by the 13th Amendment, that the Provincial Council of the Northern Province, simply crashes to the ground. It ceases to exist. What President Rajapaksa gave the people of the North is now being taken away. No Provincial Council. Everything administered from Colombo through the governor. Who is responsible for this? None other than the Tamil National Alliance. Because when this government hatched this plot, legislation was introduced, the Attorney General ruled that it could not be enacted without a two-thirds majority. The two-thirds majority was provided by the Tamil National Alliance.
And with that, let's cross over to a short commercial break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaraveera says the government will take stern measures against unregulated microfinance businesses. Speaking at an event held in Colombo today, the minister announced that a new law to regulate microfinance and protect borrowers from predatory lending is currently being finalized. The inauguration ceremony of the Asia-Pacific Rural and Agricultural Credit Association Regional Policy Forum was held in Colombo under the auspices of Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaraveera today. The event was held under the theme Financing Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Solution for Missing Middle. Speaking here, Finance Minister Mangala Samaraveera spoke on a new act on microfinancing being drafted in the backdrop where Sri Lanka wrote off more than 1.25 billion rupees in loans earlier this year with taxpayer money. The SME sector accounts for more than 75% of the total enterprises while contributing 52% of the GDP, and this law is expected to protect mostly SME sector players.
As much as access to finance is promoted through government programs, I believe the government also should focus on encouraging responsible lending practices. The proliferation of unethical lending in microfinance in particular led to a crisis situation in some parts of the country. To address this, the government of Sri Lanka just very recently has written off microfinance debts of more than 45,000 women that amounted to more than 1.25 billion, especially women in the north and east, the war-affected areas, and we are also expecting to widen that net in the course of next year. It is essential that steps are taken to stop such irresponsible lending recurring in the future. Towards this ending, the government is drafting new measures for the microfinance sector. In fact, we are at the moment putting final touches to a new act which will cover the unregulated microfinance sector, stipulating industry standards in protecting borrowers from exorbitant and unnecessary charges and other malpractices commonly seen in the industry.
Former Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Kabra says the present government has failed to build the country's reserves in order to prevent the depreciation of the Sri Lanka rupee despite continuous central bank intervention.
Firstly, this government spokesman said that exports to the GDP ratio has dropped. But they forgot to mention that exports is not only exports of goods, but exports of services as well. If you take the totality of the exports, you would find that the total exports have risen substantially during the period of the previous regime. But now we see that that is not taking place and that the entire structure of exports is dwindling. You'll also see there was an attempt to say that the central bank's intervention in the foreign exchange market is something which should not be done. This government is saying that because they have already intervened more in their 4 years, much more than what the previous government intervened in their 9 years. And yet the previous government was able to build up reserves by nearly $5 billion, whereas this government has so far dropped the reserve by more than $1 billion. It still has not been able to stop the depreciation of the currency, which is as much as 9.1% so far per annum. Under the previous regime, from 2006 right up to 2014, the rupee depreciated by only 2.8% per annum.
Meanwhile, Central Bank Governor Dr. Indranjit Kumaraswamy says it is extremely anti-nationalistic to say the country's economy is collapsed.
Growth is too low, no two ways about it. But growth in the second quarter was higher than in the first quarter. And the growth in the second half of the year is going to be higher than in the first half of the year. I don't see collapse. I see inadequate growth, and there's a lot we need to do to improve it. It's actually on an upward trend. Let's look at inflation. Headline inflation in September was 4.3% on the CCPI. Food price inflation is extremely low because we've had a pretty decent Maha and Yala. So no signs of collapse there. No signs of collapse on growth. No signs of collapse on inflation. What about reserves? Reserves are currently about 7.1 billion. They were at one point as high as 8.5 billion, but we've had some debt payments and we've fed some money into the market to have an orderly adjustment of the exchange rate. It has come down to 7.1 billion, but during the course of this week, we should get a $1 billion in from the China Development Bank, an 8-year loan at 5.25%. So where is this collapse? I really want to know, where is this collapse? And people going around saying the economy is collapsing are not being helpful. It is an extremely anti-nationalist thing to do because they have to back it up with data.
Stock rose for a fourth consecutive session to a more than 2-week closing high. The all-share price index ended 0.41% firmer at 5,908.06, its highest close since the 20th of September. It fell 3.6% last month and is down 7.2% so far this year. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee hit a record low for a fourth straight session today due to dollar demand from importers and foreign banks amid outflows from government securities. The rupee ended at 170 rupees and 50 cents to 80 cents per dollar compared with the previous close of 170 rupees and 25 cents to 30 cents. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other currencies from across the world.
Watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Chinese authorities have now officially announced that the head of Interpol, Meng Hongwei, who is a Chinese national, is currently being investigated for alleged bribe-taking. Meng was first reported missing in late last month after travelling from China from France, where the headquarters of Interpol is based. The disappearance of the president of International Police Agency, Meng Hongwei, was revealed publicly on Friday. Hongwei's wife had contacted police in Lyon, the French city where the International Police Agency is based, after not hearing from him since September 25th. However, confirming widespread doubts about his whereabouts, the Chinese authorities announced yesterday that the head of Interpol is currently being investigated for alleged bribe-taking. Meanwhile, Interpol said yesterday that Meng Hongwei resigned as president of the International Police Organization. The statement went on to say that South Korean national Kim Jong-yang would become its acting president, while it would appoint a new president during a meeting in November. A top diplomatic meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi got off to a frosty start today. The test exchange came days after blistering U.S. denunciation of the Asia's powers' global and domestic policies. Before the meeting, however, top officials of both countries aired their grievances amid worsening bilateral relations. Chinese State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi met visiting U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Beijing today. While the exchange included typical diplomatic pleasantries, the two officials' remarks before journalists at the start of their meeting in Beijing were unusually pointed. Chinese Foreign Minister said that America's groundless accusations against China's domestic and foreign policies have impacted mutual trust. He urged the U.S. to immediately stop such accusations. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, meanwhile, said China's support to U.S. plans for North Korea's nuclear disarmament is expected.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. As per the Department of Meteorology, the prevailing rainy condition is expected to enhance tomorrow as well. As we mentioned in our bulletin earlier, many parts of the country were affected due to heavy falls that exceeded 100 millimeters. The heavy showers wreaked havoc across the island, which led to landslides, floods and power outages. We are now watching an area of disturbed weather in the Arabian Sea due to the formation of a depression which is predicted to be developed into a cyclonic storm. The U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center expects this system to strengthen over the next few days. Now it's moving in the direction of Oman and Yemen, and it's going to bring some heavy rain to these areas, especially along the coast. Many international forecasters warned that the system could develop into a severe cyclonic storm, which has been named as Luban, with winds gusting to 135 kilometers per hour. That's all from the Weather Center tonight. Up next is your city-by-city forecast.
And before we go, we'd like to take you on a dive off the coast of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has an abundance of coral reefs around most parts of the island. They are rich in biodiversity, with over 180 hard coral species recorded. The colorful coral reefs with tropical fish and other marine species and shipwrecks with spectacular artificial reefs can be explored at several diving and snorkeling locations. We hope you enjoy these visuals and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.